With our next guest now, we're going to talk about a new book and a concept called platform cooperativism. It may sound like a way to keep cool on the subway waiting for the train, but in fact, it's all about how the internet can become less corporatized and more democratic.
Well, that new book is called Ours to Hack and to Own. To tell us more, we're joined by its co-editor, Trebor Scholz, who is also the author of Overworked and Underpaid, and an activist and scholar who teaches culture and media at the New School. And welcome to BK Live.
Thank you very much for having me.
Ours to Hack and to Own. I mean, that's such a great title. Obviously, from the title, you have your certain feelings about the internet and how it should function.
Yeah, you
so enlighten us
a little there.
Well, if you get up in the morning and you have your cup of coffee and you go online and you go on these websites, maybe on your phone or on your desktop, you are likely to be just on
definitely on my phone.
Definitely on your phone. So you're very likely to be on just 4 or 5 sites that are really all owned by the same people. Right? So you can think about, what would it actually be if we would own the sites or co-own the sites that we depend on most. Think of the social networking sites you're using. But then also increasingly, people are using these labor apps like Uber or Airbnb for short-term rentals or Handy, you name it, TaskRabbit. Yeah. And what would it be like if those sites would actually be owned by the people that use them and the people who work on them? Right, so what would it be like if an Uber would be owned by the drivers and something like Airbnb operated by cities and maybe residents, right? So this came about like in 2014, this idea, and really out of the existence of those businesses already. So there are really hundreds of examples of this out in the world, including here in New York with Up and Go, just launched in Queens, which basically allows you to hire a pet walker, somebody to clean your apartment, and eventually a babysitter. You're in for it. You should check it out. And all of these workers that will come to your house are all working from cooperatives. Okay. So if you are caring about immigrants in New York, right, this is your place to get your house cleaned.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Where the rubber meets the road, yes.
So this cooperativism, we've seen it at work and play in Brooklyn. The Park Slope Co-op, the food co-op, has been world famous. Like their model's been replicated so many times. So what are the real steps in taking those ideas and these things that are even in action and transmitting that into the digital realm? What are the steps in making that a reality?
Well, there are different ways of getting at this issue, right? So some, like in Barcelona, for example, there's a cooperative book chain, and they are competing with Amazon. So they are thinking of going online as a cooperative, so creating a platform co-op. Then you can think about other existing cooperatives and how they can go online. But you can also think about startups that are now basically want to thrive and develop. How can they find a different model than the venture capitalist model, where you immediately follow the logic of the tyranny of the margin, which means that you are immediately immediately pushed to profits.
Yeah, and if you want to get the money, you have to go to the people who have the money, who want to keep making the money, so you do it this way.
That's right, and you get the money and are losing control of your product, right, of your project. Yeah. And so people are, often bemoaning this fact, but never really saw another path out of the situation. And so I think this is where cooperative ownership can come in. And you see it being very successful with examples like Stocksy in Canada, which is an online stock photography site where the photographers own the platform. So they made $7 million last year,
and
so they were
quite
profitable.
To the big clearinghouse that gives them pennies on the dollar for what they charge to people.
They give about half of the profits to the photographers, and then at the end of the year they're dispersing the rest of the profit and keep a little bit, of course, for operation. But so these things are not abstract. It's not some sort of academic idea, but it's in fact something that exists in reality, and that through our work we try to support and nourish.
Gotcha.
Okay, so what we have your support, we have the idea, but what is the real barrier at this point for people starting their own platform co-ops? Like, how does this break into the next level?
Well, some people don't understand the difference between, traditional cooperatives. So let's think of the Park Slope Food Co-op. The New York Times loves to call it the last holdout of Stalinism in the United States, right? So these kind of prejudices of traditional cooperatives are sometimes in the way. So people say like, oh, this might not work anyway. Right? Didn't we learn by now that this model doesn't work? So, but when they actually look closer at what existing platform cooperatives really do, they see vast differences to some of the historical shortcomings of cooperatives. And so they do contribute to the larger good. They put open source platforms out there that other people can replicate. They contribute to the commons, right? So that's one thought. Another one would be, of course, there are many challenges, right? Scale is another very often brought up concern, right? So like doesn't it need, if you think about Uber with all its international distribution, doesn't we need something like that for any cooperative app as well? And the fact is that not in all circumstances do you need such international operation, right? In some, for example, with Up and Go, they might very well be very successful in New York, right? And not go to San Francisco and whatever, Canada. Right?
So let's keep it local then. On that same strain, President-elect Trump has made a lot of news talking about all the jobs he's going to keep in America and how all the trade deals are trash. But can this sort of giggy co-op economy really sustain people in a city like New York? Can I make my rent, go out for a beer with this one, live a life, and take the train?
Can I use that term you just coined, like this giggy online economy? I love it. No, I think in a context where you have this hostile political and economic environment, right, where quite undoubtedly it will get tougher on workers. This is actually a way to insulate workers from this harm, right? It is a way to insulate workers from these threats and really create a fair workplace despite everything that is going on. Will it solve all the problems that capitalism brings about? It will not, right? It's one stone like within a larger bricolage of other organizational forms, right? Like the LLCs, you name it. I mean, there are many other forms. The solidarity economy, the pro-commons movement, like all of these go together, right? And so it's not a silver bullet, but it is for a group of people right now something they can do quite concretely, right? It's not an utopia.
Right. Well, it's certainly no utopia. Utopia would be a place where everyone has a job. And in this day and age, most people are concerned with jobs. Something like this is you would describe as sort of maybe a disruptor. Now, when you take that in terms of, let's say, NAFTA, we know millions of jobs have left the country, and those jobs will never come back. How does a platform co-op help working people, and how does it bring jobs back?
Well, I mean, here's a chance. I mean, just think about the hundreds of thousands of people who come out of prison every year in the United States. And what are the chances of them to enter high-paying jobs again, right? So I think this model of self-organization can be very powerful, right? So in an agricultural context, in this online service context, where basically people who are, I mean, this has always been the motivation for unions as much as cooperatives, right? Is people helping themselves because they can't survive, right? They can't make ends meet. And this is where basically people working together in this sort of self-organized way through a platform co-op or in other ways, become more resilient.
So Trebor, looking at the landscape as it is now, we know people of color are sort of over-indexed when it comes to these user technologies on Twitter and Instagram, but there's also still a large digital divide. How do we shore that up to make sure that those people and people who just don't have access, whether they're in Appalachia or in NYCHA, don't get left behind in this, what could be a really great way to get over that hump and find the new technologies and get into that community.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are initiatives that actually try to breach that divide, for one. And then, there are also analog solutions. I mean, so I think what's very important about this is that it's not about some kind of techno-solutionism, right? This is not about some software or some techno idea, rescuing the world. But it is about sort of a techno-social response to this sort of very precarious situation for so many people. So I think, there, like I said, there is the solidarity economy. There are many other solutions that might work for people who are not online. Yeah. But for the context in which, let's here in Brooklyn, for example, often this is a good response. It's something that can really tangibly and with the near term help people, right? And I think this is often what, with activist project, there was often this problem that there is obviously sort of goals or objectives that are too far in the future, right?
Here and now.
Yeah, and this is something that is a sort of concrete, near-term project that people can engage with, and that works.
And purchase right now on Amazon too?
I think so. I think now it is also on Amazon.
Well, Ours to Hack and to Own. Thank you so much, Trebor Scholz,
Thank you for having me.
For writing the book, and to your co-author as well.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us today.